morning, everyone. Ng aga. Sa sininga time, we will discuss complex analytic functions. But before ta magkadto sa complex analytic function, mahatag ko anay isang gamay nga overview. Ang complex analytic function, composed na siya sang complex numbers. Kag ang complex numbers is composed of real numbers plus imaginary number. Ang real numbers are probably tanan nga mga numbers nga naton-an nyo halin sang elementary kamo hasta sa before nag-learn kamo sang advanced math. Real numbers are, it can be integers. Ang integers magambal ta tanan nga whole numbers nga negative. Tanan nga mga integers ni siya 0, 1, pati 0 kag tanan nga mga numbers nga positive. It can also be rational numbers. Rational numbers are numbers nga let's say 1.5 nga pwede mo siya ma-express in terms of a fraction. So these are rational. These are integers. Kag pwede man irrational numbers. Mga numbers nga hindi mo ma-express in terms of a fraction, like for example, ang aton nga pi. This is a non-terminating nga decimal 3.10. So actually unending na siya ng pi. But ang imaginary numbers are numbers nga, on the other hand, imaginary numbers are numbers nga hindi real, in a sense nga hindi ka makapangita sang number gid sa number system naton nga pwede mag-represent sa imaginary numbers. Ang imaginary numbers ka-result ni siya sa square root of negative 1. Usually, gina-designate ni siya as I or J. Because, kung natawon ta, ang positive 1 times positive 1 is equal to positive 1 squared or 1. On the other hand, ang negative 1 times negative 1 is equal to 1 squared man gyapon or 1. So, kung i-square root ta ni siya ang 1, it means nga it can be either positive or negative 1. So, hindi ka makapangita sang number nga result siya sang square root sang negative 1 because you know nga ang square root of negative 1 is not negative 1 because negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1 squared. That is why it is called imaginary numbers. So, this time, ma-discuss ta anay sa mga operation sa imaginary numbers. Kung paano mag-simplify sa imaginary numbers. Because may mga questions sa board exam nga gagawa ni siya paano mag-simplify sa complex number as ang imaginary number. Okay. We will start with this. Ang I is equal to square root of negative 1. Ang I squared is equal to square root of negative 1 times square root of negative 1 or square root of negative 1 squared. Therefore, we can say that I squared is equal to, cancel, is equal to negative 1. I cube is equal to square root of I squared plus 1, diba? I cube. So, this is equal to I squared sa law of exponents times I to the power of 1. Diba? Sa law of exponents, kung pareho ang base sang exponent, ma-add ang iyang exponents. So, I squared is equal to negative 1 ari sa babaw. So negative 1 ang I squared, kag ang I to the positive 1 is I. So therefore I cube is equal to negative I. Okay? And I to the power of 4 is equal to I squared times I squared plus 2. Sa law of exponents, dumduman nyo sa law of exponents, a to the power of n times a to the power of m is equal to a to the power of n plus m. So ini siya, ang babaw, equal na siya gali sa a to the power of 2 times a to the power of 2. A to the power of 2 times a to the power of 2 is I to the power of 2 times I to the power of 2 is equal to I to the power of 4. But what is I squared? I squared is negative 1. So negative 1 times negative 1 is equal to positive 1. So amo ni siya gali ang apat ka pwede magamit naton to simplify a complex number. So ano ng apat? I is equal to square root of negative 1. I squared is equal to negative 1. I cubed is equal to negative I. Kag I to the power of 4 is equal to 1. So tanan na dayon nga mga imaginary numbers nga may exponent, pwede naton ma-simplify gamit ini. For example, I to the power of 5 is equal to, we know nga I to the power of 5 is simply equal to I to the power of 4 plus 1. 4 plus 1, 5. So, i-break down ta lang tanan nga mga exponents such that ma-fit sila dire. So, this becomes I to the power of 4 times I to the power of 1. I to the power of 4 is what? It is equal to 1. Kag I to the power of 1 is equal to square root of negative 1 or simply I. So meaning, I to the power of 5 is simply 1 times I, or that is simply equal to I. So amo ni siyang iyang simplified form, I to the power of 5 gali is simply equal to I. Okay. So, pamutanta lang ni siya sa babaw para matandaan ta. Wala ta di dapat sang sa ulohon, hindi ka mo dapat magsaulo. Kay kung tanan nga gina sa ulo, malipatan lang na. Pero kung na gets nyo ang principle, pag abot sa board exam, may magwa ba nga problem na i-simplify ang I to the power of 256. Tapos sa choices, let's say A. Sa choices, may magwa nga, let's say, I to the power of 256 is equal to I, or equal to 1, or equal to negative 1. Kabalo ka mo kung diin kung paano isolve no, gamit ang ini nga principle. So, again, ibutang ko di sa babaw. I is equal to square root of negative 1. I to the power of 2 is equal to negative 1. I to the power of 3 is equal to negative I. Kag I to the power of 4 is equal to 1. Okay. So, this time, aton nga i-solve ang the following problems. A. Solve or simplify I to the power of 256. Letter B. Simplify I to the power of 1003. Letter C. I to the power of 2036. So, isolve ta ni ang ini nga mga imaginary numbers nga may mga dagko nga exponents. So, as I've said, amo ni siya ang pwede naton gamiton no, sa pag-simplify. So, paano siya isolve? Ang technique actually is pangitaon mo ang divisor sang 256, i-divide mo ang 256 sa 4. Kay nakita ta nga ang I to the power of 4 is equal to 1. So 250 256 divided by 4 equals 64. So ang guaya is 256 divided by 4 is equal to 64. Okay. So ang imuon ta dayon is lantawon ta kon pila ang 4 times nabalanta na kay 256 is equal to 4 times 64 is 256, wala sang waki 256. So meaning pwede ta ni siya gamit diretso substitute. So I to the 256 is simply equal to I to the power of 4 times 64. What is I to the power of 4? I to the power of 4, kung nandun ta di sa babaw, it is equal to 1. So, ang 1, i-raise ta sa power of 64. And we know that 1 raised to any power is equal to 1. Therefore, I to the 256 is simply equal to 1. Okay. Second, I to the power of 1003. Same lang tapos na solusyon. So, ang first natong himuon is ang 1003 i-divide naton sa 4. Among ang first step, i-divide sa 4. 250.75. 200. So I to the 1003, I to the power of 1003 is equal to I, and 1003 is 250.75 times 4. So, kuhaon ta ni ang decimal, kadtulan ta sa 250, gamiton ta 250 times 4, which is 250 times 4 is 1,000. Okay. So, guaya is 1,000, okay, plus 3, di ba? 1,000 plus 3. So, tapos nakatama, that is I to 1,003 is equal to I raised to 1,000 plus 3. Using the law of exponents, ang guaya is I to the power of 1,000 times I to the power of 3. Now, I to the power of 1,000 is I to the power of 4 times ang 4 times 250, di ba? Times I to the power of 3. I to the power of 4 is, again, equal to 1 raised to 250 times I cube. We know that 1 raised to any number is still 1 times ang I cube is equal to negative 1. Negative I cube is equal to negative I. Negative I. So ang final answer is negative I, meaning I to the power of 1003 is equal to negative I. I to the 1003 is equal to negative I. Next, I to the power of 2036. Again, ang 2036 i-divide ta sa 4. Okay? 2036 divided by 4. Ang diri sa akong calculator, 509. So, exact katama. That is I to the power of 2036 is equal to I to the power of 4. 4 times 509. So basta mag-amo ni gani nga exact na, tapos na nakatama, kaya ang answer sina is 1. Kaya nga I to the power of 4, ma-express na siya as I to the power of 4 times 509, di ba? Sa inyong exponents, law of exponents, pwede ni siya mabuta nga amo ni. Then, I to the power of 4 is 1. Sorry. So, 1 raised to the power of 509 is still equal to 1. Therefore, I to the power of 2036 is equal to 1. Okay, so tanan nga imaginary numbers nga pwede i-simplify, magamitan niya sa amo nga technique. Ang first nga himuon ninyo is divide the exponent by 4. Tapos ang I to the power of 4, tandaan nyo lang nga it is equal to 1. Tapos from there, ang 1 erase mo sa bisan ano panada nga kadako nga exponent, ma-equal lang gina siya sa 1. Tapos ang bilin sina are either I squared kag I cubed, and ari ang iyang mga answers kon ano man ang imong mga bilin. No? So amo na siya mag-simplify sang imaginary number.